Robert Tyrone Hayes is an American serial killer who has been convicted of 3 murders in Daytona Beach, Florida, between December 2005 and February 2006. But before we get any further, hello and welcome to the Murder House Radio Show. I'm your host, X. On this show, we will be covering serial killers, mass shooters, disappearances, true crime, and the most deplorable things and people in history. All that good, dark stuff. The Murder House Radio Show will be a radio show / podcast. I'll be uploading videos every Friday at 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. Once you hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification button and select all to get all notifications if you are viewing on YouTube. Hit the follow button if you're listening on a podcasting platform. Please also be sure to check out the sources in the description below, as well as the social medias, which are all linked in the description. Also, please comment future video ideas you'd like to see covered on this podcast. So sit down, get comfortable, grab some coffee or whatever your preferred beverage is, turn off the lights, and enjoy the show. Robert Tyrone Hayes was born on March 12, 1982, in West Palm Beach, Florida, the youngest of 4 children. Growing up, Hayes was raised primarily by his mother. This is because his father was murdered shortly after his birth, and according to reports later on, Hayes received an uncertain amount of abuse as a child. When he was young, presumably a teenager, he was molested by a family member of a similar age to his own. He was described as chubby in his adolescence, resulting in Hayes often being bullied. Yeah, that's the sad pattern for a lot of these serial killers. A history of sexual assault and abuse. His childhood nickname was Squeaky. He was called this by his friends and family. He was also described as someone who is always there for people and friendly with neighbors, outspoken, and recited poetry in Miami. He is known by friends to have an active sex life, attending sex parties, suspected of inviting prostitutes over, and at one point he invited a family member to a sex party. I don't think I'd invite a family member to a sex party, but that's just me. But some people are a little freaky. I don't know. He was also described as someone with a good sense of humor and a fun, positive attitude. Hayes did have a child with a girlfriend he had in the 2000s. Between the years 2000 and 2006, Hayes attended Bethune-Cookman College, which is now Bethune-Cookman University, studying criminal justice. He graduated with a degree in criminal justice. His first known victim was a 45-year-old woman named Laquetta Mae Gunther, who was found in an alley on December 26, 2005. She had been shot in the back of the head. DNA was recovered from the scene. Laquetta had gone missing 2 days prior on Christmas Eve. That's tragic. She was making dinner plans with her friend Stacy Dittmer. When the time came, Laquetta never showed up. She was known to have work as a prostitute. The second victim was 34-year-old Julie Green, found January 14th, 2006. She was also known to have worked as a prostitute. She was also shot in the back of the head. No DNA was recovered, but tire tracks were found at the scene. The tires were said to belong to a 2003 Taurus or a saddle. And in fact, the exact tires were later found. That's the thing with murder cases. Like, every detail matters if you want to get away with it. Every little detail. So, like, it's almost not worth it, especially in today's day and age with all the DNA evidence and what they can do to find all that stuff out. A month later, from the second victim, on February 24th, 2006, police found the body of Iwan Patton, who was 35 years old, on a dirt road. She had been shot, but not in the back of the head, and possibly had struggled with the killer. DNA was recovered, along with a shell casing that allowed police to identify the make and the model of the pistol used. A .40 caliber Smith & Wesson Sigma Series VE. Ballistics from recovered bullets and recovered DNA matched. All three of these women are believed to have been sex workers in the Daytona Beach area. Police believed the victims voluntarily accompanied their killer, possibly in a vehicle, and were subsequently murdered and dumped in the same area of Daytona Beach. The killer did not attempt to conceal the bodies. A criminal profile was made of the killer. Investigators theorized that the killer was likely a white male with a female companion in his life whom he resented. It was believed the victims were the result of the killer letting out their frustrations on them. The public had their own theories, believing the killer was involved in a certain line of work that was allowing them not to be suspected. Some believed the killer was perhaps a truck driver, while others thought he was of military background, or possibly even a law enforcement officer. Numerous suspects were interviewed, including Hayes, because he had bought a .40 caliber Smith & Wesson weeks before the first murder. However, he was not thought to have been involved, and some believed the profile which mentioned the killer to have been white might have been the reason he was not investigated further. Well, it's a possibility. Makes sense. There aren't many black serial killers that you hear about. Like, there are the gang dudes who do all the killing. They could technically be serial killers, because what, a serial killer, you need at least 3 victims, and some of them have way more than 3, but I guess that's not really serial killer activities in people's minds, but yeah, it's interesting. The Daytona Beach PD created a task force to find the killer, who by the time was labeled by the police and the media as the Daytona Beach Killer. 4 detectives were assigned to the case with input from agents from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. Police used field DNA kits to take samples of motorists fitting the profile of a white male with a girlfriend. The samples were taken to a lab to match with genetic materials taken from the crime scene. They had to have had more information to go for to do that, because, like, they can't really just pull people over. Hey, man, you want to take this swab? On March 7th, 2016, the naked body of 32-year-old Rachel Elizabeth Bay was found dead alongside a highway near Jupiter, Florida. An autopsy was performed on her body, which showed she had been strangled and badly beaten, and other evidence showed that Bay had fought her attacker. DNA evidence of the perpetrator was found during the investigation. In December 2016, detectives involved with the investigation into Bay's murder were notified that the DNA found on Bay's body had matched to the samples taken from the original Daytona killings. There has been other suspected victims of Hayes, but I won't get into those at this time. On September 15th, 2019, Palm Beach County officials arrested Hayes, 37 at the time, at his West Palm Beach home for the killing of Rachel Bay. He was charged with one count of first-degree murder and was ordered to be held without bail. DNA found on Bay matched DNA recovered from Gunther and Green, two of the Daytona Beach killer's victims, and ballistic tests connected Hayes to the killings of Patton. Hayes was transferred to Volusia County Jail, where he was charged with 3 additional counts of first-degree murder. Before his arrest, Lori Napolito, chief of Florida Department of Law Enforcement's Forensic Department, reported that DNA collected from the Daytona Beach killer's victims was run through a genetic database used by people trying to find long-lost relatives, and a link to Hayes was established. Hayes was put under surveillance, and police collected a used cigarette butt, which they used to get the DNA off it and link Hayes to the killings. So, initially prosecutors sought the death penalty for Hayes. Hayes' trial began on the 11th of February 2022. On February 22nd, 2022, Hayes was found guilty on all 3 counts of murder. On March 2nd, 2022, Hayes was sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences without parole. So yeah, there's that for you. What are your guys' thoughts? It's definitely a short video. There's not much information here. But yeah, it's a new one. It's definitely a newer one, which is interesting. I like to read some of the newer ones because a lot of the serial killers I've covered are old, like real old. But yeah, so that is the case of Robert Hayes. Thank you for listening to this episode on the Murder House Radio Show. I hope you have a good rest of your Friday, or whenever you are listening to this. Please check out the social medias and the sources in the description below. Make sure to leave your recommendations for future episodes in the comments below. Please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share if you are viewing on YouTube. And if you're listening on a podcasting platform, hit follow. And also, once you subscribe on YouTube, hit the bell notification and select all to get all notifications. But this is your host X, signing off. See you next Friday.